Hey, all you rad dads out there.
Good day, Rad Dads. I have a guest. Everyone will probably know. Who are you, sir?
My name is Kevin Harris.
Fantastic. How are you today?
I'm doing fantastic.
Wicked, wicked, wicked. So you're a dad. How many
Yes.
kids do you have?
I have two kids,
Yes.
and man, time goes fast. Like
It does.
I'm old now,
Nah.
but yeah, they're 30. What my one kid, my oldest one's 32ish or 33, and the other one's 30, 31. So
Wow.
yeah, but basically when they were old enough to walk, especially my youngest one, Kolby, he was on a skateboard. And what I felt was super cool about that wasn't just because I skateboarded. He's seen it, he wanted to get involved in it. And right from very early ages, he was hooked, which was cool to see as a dad going, hey, my kid is naturally going into skateboarding instead of me going, hey, you need to skateboard. So
That's awesome. What's the name of your other child?
So it's Aaron. So I really lucked out as a father. Is got an amazing family. So I was married at 20 years old. So we're coming up to our 38th anniversary now, or whatever the heck it is. And I had the best of both worlds. So I had my youngest, who was totally sports minded, though, super good snowboarder, super good skateboarder, video guy. He runs a lot of the social media stuff for our company. And my other guy was like the MacGyver, fixes anything. So I'm not that Mr. Fix-It guy. So I had the best of both worlds. Something breaks down, my son fixes it, and I had the other one to go snowboarding and skateboarding with and all that. So it was pretty awesome, and it still is.
Sweet. That's sweet. So what makes you a rad dad? Or do you feel you're a rad dad?
Yeah, I don't think I try to be, but I mean, skateboarding to me, unlike any other sport, other like hockey, baseball, anything like that, when you skateboard, I don't care how old you are, you kind of get that youth. It's the fountain of youth. It's you still listen to the coolest music that's going on. You're still tied into the guys up and coming skating. You know what it's like. I mean, when you skateboard, it's just a different thing. And if that turns out to be that you're a rad dad because of that, without trying,
Yeah,
I guess you're a rad dad, right? Because one of my kids, especially the youngest one, when he started, skateboarding and snowboarding all the time, it was going to the skateboard park. I mean, it's totally different than dad who plays baseball bringing his son to the baseball park. I mean, you go to a skateboard park with your kid, now you got the father son. And I guess at that time, I was probably one of the earliest phases of seeing a dad and a kid skateboard. So this would have been mid-90s, which is kind of unheard of. Now you see it, of course, a lot more where the dad and the kid are skateboarding. But back then it was very unusual. I was one of the few people at that kids, right? So.
Oh, that's sweet. Yes. Where in your career were you when you had your kids?
Yeah, great question. At the peak of it, like, I never, like, great story on that. We were building the mini chin with Lance Mountain in 1987 at the skate park at the Richmond Skate Ranch, and busy part of my career, right? Traveling the world, building skateboard parks, starting Ultimate Distribution. So I look back now going, how did my wife and I ever do it? The last thing I needed in my life, even though I wanted them, was a kid, because it was crazy. So I'll never forget this. We're nearly finished the mini chin. Audrey, my wife, comes downstairs, and I've been building 12 hours a day, building these ramps with Lance. And she goes, I'm pregnant. And I remember this look and going, that can't happen right now. So yeah, I mean, you just great. I've always wanted kids, but when you're like, seriously, during that time in 87, I might have been home for a dozen days in the whole year. So thank God my wife worked for the airlines and fly into different countries, but that's how busy our life was. So Aaron, being born first, he always tells me now, well, I want to go to this place in that country, in this country. And it's like, you did that, buddy, when you were 2, 3, 4, 5, 8 months old. He was traveling the world with us as a baby, but of course he doesn't remember going to these countries, right? But yeah, so it was just one of those things that you just adapted. But 87 to 89, right in that time period when Aaron was just a baby. that was some of the most, traveling times of my life, right? It was just one after the other. It was come home, get some new clothes and go again.
Holy smokes, busy man back then, eh?
It was, I seriously look back now going, I mean, we're still really busy now in the skateboard industry and stuff, but back then I was just like, packing a baby around to different countries is a lot of work.
It is. Absolutely.
Yeah, but I had super supportive people around me, so it's good.
So has fatherhood changed you in any way?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, it changes your life, right? I mean, I honestly look back now going, I wish I had more kids.
Oh, really?
But at that time you're just so busy. Can you do a third one and a fourth one? But man, I've got, and again, I put it all into skateboarding. I mean, so many of my friends around me that don't skateboard, or the parents are like, I can hardly wait till my kid's 18 years old and moves out of the house and gets a job and he's driving me crazy. I was the opposite. Like my wife and I were like, bawling our heads off when both kids eventually left the house, because you lose kind of not only your father, you lose your best friends.
Oh,
but
wow.
Right, so we still see them all the time and stuff, but when they leave the nest, it was devastating to me, because instead of, and even when my kid got his driver's license, now he can go to a skateboard park on his own. Like, how did I know that?
Bring dad.
Yeah, bring dad along, right? Yeah.
Did you have any fears becoming a dad?
Yeah. But I think my wife and I have always looked at things, like even when we started, our businesses around skateboarding, I had no idea how to do all that, but you just adapt. And it was the same thing. Sure, you're nervous about, okay, you got a baby on the way, but you just adapt and deal with it. And of course, it's the best thing that can ever happen to you in your life, and to be, a father.
Oh, absolutely. I agree. I totally agree with that. What's the most rewarding aspects of being a father?
I think seeing your kids develop, over the time, and be super good people at the end of the day. So I hope I've shown them kind of where to be. But my kids now, like, just after this, I'm going up to Sunshine Valley, which is some recreational property that we own, and we're the developers up there. My son, the oldest one, the MacGyver I was telling you about, he does all the snow clearing up there. He deals with all the people up there. And it's amazing when I go up there where people come up, I don't even know these people. And, are you Aaron's dad? Yeah. Oh my God, I'd adopt that kid in a heartbeat. He does this and does that for me. So it's nice to hear all the positive, stuff around me. And I do go back to, it's a big part of skateboarding and the culture around that, right? That even though my older son didn't skateboard or snowboard a lot, he was still around it, right?
Yeah.
He was still in that interest. And, I've got people in my life that are outside skateboarding that are more corporate business guys. And it's nowhere close to dealing with what the skateboard industry, how we deal with that as a family, right? And so I've learned now, being nearly 6 years old, is the skateboard industry is, and I've always known this, but knowing it more recently, is so different than anything else. And it's such a family thing. And I think everybody in the world got to see that in the Olympics for the first time, when the girls were skating the park. And that's what skateboarding's always been. But I grew up with, oh my God, you're a skateboarder in the 80s, like we were talking about before. Oh, you must be a drug addict, and you must be a double, and how dare you skateboard, and you got kids, like, and you're a skateboarder. Oh, hang on, you're a professional skateboarder? Like, what? How does that work? Like, you're honestly telling me skateboard and you can put food on the table for your kids?
Yeah,
right? Like,
that's the dream for a lot of skateboarders, is to do that, like put food on the table by being a skater,
or anything skateboarding, right? So when I first got my paycheck for skateboarding, I was just like, my brain was like, that doesn't work. Like, you're paying me to skateboard? Like, and if somebody would ask me back then if my graphic and everything was still desired around the world and I'd still have this kind of thing, I'd be just like, nah, it's not gonna happen.
Not gonna happen.
Yeah, I think Powell sells more to my boards, way more of my boards now than they ever did.
Oh, really?
When were all freestylers in the 80s, right?
Well, it's very popular on the skateboard sites. That's for
Yeah,
sure.
it's pretty cool. It's super nice to see, and I'm very humbled by it, right? Kind of
Yeah,
cool.
absolutely. Yeah, with you just had the release of the Maple Street skateboard that
Yeah,
you had with your friend, and
yeah.
then you re-released your Powell graphic, which is an amazing. Like I got both, so I'm
Oh,
pretty stoked about that.
nice, nice. I mean,
Like,
the group is being so iconic, right? Like, the people that have sent me stuff from around the world that have got it tattooed on them, and one of the biggest things with my youngest Kolby, he got my graphic tattooed on him, and that was like, I really lost it when I seen that, because he didn't tell me he was going to get it done. Then all of a sudden, I don't know, we were up to dinner or whatever, and he shows me this graphic. So that was
that's
one of the
awesome.
highlights. That was pretty cool.
That's so rad. That's just awesome. Can you describe your relationship with your father?
Oh yeah. So going back to that Maple Road thing, and again, at the time you take it for granted, but looking back now, it was so rare. So my mom and dad on Maple Street allowed us to build a ramp in their backyard. So when I got into it at 13 years old, I didn't know what the hammer, how to work all that crap, right? So, but there was no parents that were going to come out and help you build a skateboard ramp. I don't know what they're doing. This is a brand new thing.
Yeah.
So we'd look at skateboard magazines and figure out how to build these things. But it turned me into, like, I could have made a living being a skateboard park builder, because we learned how to build. And the ramp that we had in our backyard, I swear to God now, through 78, 79, 80, was the best vert ramp in all of Canada. Didn't know it at the time, but crazy. Pool coping, state of the art, super wide for its time. Some of the best skateboarders on the planet skated it. So my mom and dad were incredible supporters of skateboarding. And where I had other friends that skateboarded, where their parents were like, yeah, no, this is not working, go play baseball.
Yeah.
Right. So my mom and dad were super supportive. So I had a great relationship. And then when we started Ultimate Skateboard Distribution in '85, first distribution network in Canada for skateboarding, I needed the support because I was traveling so much. And so my dad helped out hugely to be that guy that was, and it was in '85, it was expanding like crazy. So we were kind of like doubling every month, right? So more employees, more space, more inventory. So it was, it was pretty chaotic, and he was there to support it 100%.
Oh, wow. That's really awesome.
Yeah.
It's always nice to have that father support when you're doing things. I like, that's main reasons behind Rad Dads is trying to be more of a positive dad influence on our children.
Right.
Like a lot of us, we just didn't have it. Like personally, my dad thought skateboarding was dumb. He didn't approve of it at all. He's just like, why would you do something stupid like that? So it was just not good.
Yeah,
But
and you're not alone, right? Like, I'm going to say 98% of parents, especially back then, were just like, no, you're not getting into skateboarding, right? And they would have rather had them into hockey or anything else. But again, we both know, because we've been there, done that show me another sport that even comes close. Show me something else that even comes close.
Absolutely.
The inner thing what skateboarding brings. Because I play hockey, I play baseball. Sure, they're fun. Not even close to what skateboarding brings. Not even close.
No, skateboarding it's a culture. It's different than any other sport out there.
And I hate even calling it a sport. I can't even think of the word that, if you're a true skateboarder, what that really means. And how many people have come up to me in my career, and even when I was in Edmonton, on coming up and going, skateboarding changed my life. And they'll thank me for doing a demo at a mall someplace in 1984, where I just come into Grand Prairie, for argument's sake, and I leave Grand Prairie, but I did a mall demo. I didn't know what I'd left behind, but what I left behind is that 14-year-old that was maybe, thinking which direction he was going to go and getting involved in the wrong crap. And he seen me skateboard, and he went out the next day and bought a skateboard, and it completely changed his life, to the point, like, if I didn't have skateboard in my life, I don't know where I'd be in life. I don't know if I'd be around. Right.
Absolutely.
So they come up, and they're big guys sometimes with tattoos and everything, and they kind of double shake your hand. And if anybody population wise are looking at these guys, you would never maybe want to run into this guy in the back alley. But he's coming up, and he's teared in the eyes on how skateboarding changed their life. Right.
Oh, absolutely.
And everything about it I love. Right. And that's why I'm still so heavily involved with it.
That's awesome. Like, yeah, skateboarding for me has been a blessing. It's just it's created me as a person, I feel. Like
Yeah,
I don't know who I'd
100%.
be without it. Like if I didn't
Yeah,
have a skateboard,
and
who
I
would
don't know
I
what you
be?
do, but it also helps you in everything else in life, right? So skateboarding teaches you something in your brain that when you're dealing with anything else, it's not that brick wall. You'll get around it and you'll figure it out, because we had to, as skateboarders,
Yeah.
figure it out, right?
Yeah, it gave us a sense of belonging. You
Yes.
know,
Yeah. Yeah.
we belonged to something. We created something. It's
Yeah.
just I try to explain to my wife about skateboarding, like, because I collect the skateboards all the time and stuff like that. And she's like, why? I'm like, the art is incredible. And it brings back memories of what I like, who I was as a teenager, like it's just fills me with joy.
Yeah. And how much skateboarding, how many people have been in the skateboard world who still connected that went on to be incredibly successful in other genres,
Absolutely.
but skateboarding helped them get there, right? Like just on and on and on. Like, you could have a list of 100 people in the world that people know are household names that were really created from them skating.
Yeah, absolutely. I
Yeah.
agree 100%.
Yeah.
It's just a true way of life, like
Yeah.
no one can understand what it's like to be a skateboarder. Nobody,
Yeah. Yeah.
unless you do it.
Let's
And
be
when you
actually.
do it, then you just know the family, the creativity, the attitude, it's there.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you can go to a skateboard park as a dad and skate with your kid, like,
Yeah.
how cool is that, right? Like,
It's
I
so
thought it
rad.
was great up with Kolby because we were totally two different things. He was doing the street skating thing, of course, because it was the cool thing. And old school dad was doing all this freestyle stuff, right? But there was a couple of good times at skateboard parks. There was a point in the early 90s where what I was doing was totally uncool, right? So the street skaters out there were like, get out of here, old school guy, and get my line of the park and all this. But as Kolby started to develop and skateboarding was really kicking in by the later 90s,
Yeah.
we'd go to a park that was like super busy, and he goes, Dad, just go over to that flat area over there and start freestyling, because half the kids will go over and watch you, and it'll free up the rest of the space in the park.
That's awesome.
So
That's cool. So how did you deal with being away from your kids?
I try to take them as much as I could. And, another big part of my life was 1990, 1991 comes along, and street skating had exploded to the point that NSA, which was all the big pro contests in the 80s, were like, hang on, that's a big deal to run every weekend doing street, vert, and freestyle. Well, hang on here. Rodney's going to win freestyle every single time. So why don't we axe that and do street and vert? So when I knew that, I knew it was kind of the death of freestyle. So there was two things that were going on in my mind was, crap, I love competing. I love being there. I love the whole thing. But now I'm not going to go to 8 contests a year anymore.
Yeah.
There was a whole other side of me. It's like, okay, I get to raise my kids. Right. So I was that staying home dad that would get him to school in the morning, meet him at lunch, go to all the field trips, all that kind of stuff. Cause I was flexible enough to do it. But if street never existed and freestyle was still heavily in, then it still would have been a lot of traveling, trying to take my kids when I could. But when they got into the school system, would have been a different thing. So it was kind of like the yin and the yang, right? There was a big part of me that's like, okay, my traveling career is over because freestyle is this weird kind of thing off the side that nobody wants to deal with anymore. And Rodney's converted over to street versus raising my kids. And I don't look back, regretting anything, because I was so thankful I was there on a day-to-day basis raising my kids.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. I myself, with my kids in their early years, we chose for me to stay home and raise them half their life, and that was probably one of the most rewarding things, to do.
Agreed, 100%. So I'm really happy to hear you did that too, because I look back now going, man, I wouldn't change that for the world.
No,
right?
not at all. Like to be more of an influence on my children was great. Like I have a great relationship with my 2 daughters, and
Older.
My oldest is 26.
Okay.
And my youngest is 19.
Okay. And you got a great relationship with them, right? I mean, that's
absolutely. I just they're beautiful young ladies. They're intelligent, strong, and I have that to deal with being there for them when they were younger.
Good for you, man. That's awesome.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah, that's incredible. Yeah.
So you just released 2 new boards out in the world, which was awesome. What's next for Kevin Harris?
Oh my God. My life in skateboarding right now, like, okay, so you would know this too. Before COVID, skateboarding was struggling.
It was.
So it was every year it kind of lost like 15 or 20%. Olympics kind of kicks in, but it hadn't really jump started it yet, right? COVID kicks in, it explodes it, right?
Absolutely.
So the kid now that was in hockey is now the parents want him out of the house. So here, Johnny, here's a basketball hoop, a bike, a scooter, or a skateboard. So that lit up, which was great for me to see because it got a lot of people into skateboarding that never would have got into skateboarding. So I don't know how many times since COVID I've talked to parents that were the hockey mom or the soccer mom that are now the skateboard mom, right? Who are like, I never knew this existed, how cool this thing is. And this is a great thing for my kid. Before COVID, before my kid wanted to skateboard, I would never ever get him into skateboarding. But now that he's in, so you hear about that, a lot. So what that's done is lit up a lot of things that we were working on before COVID for the skateboard industry that have now tenfold because of COVID. So there's some pretty exciting stuff that the world will see in the next couple months.
Awesome.
For a big part of skateboarding. I think one of the great things we got going on, Slam City Jam, of course, was a huge part of skateboarding in Vancouver. We lost that to Alberta, to Calgary, which I knew it was going to fail because people want to come to Vancouver. They don't want to go to Calgary. So it was a fail. But we've always wanted to bring that event back. And we teamed up with the Langley Event Center where the Giants play, huge venue in Langley. So we got a Slam City style contest June 10th, 11th, and 12th. COVID still, however that's going to play out, but
yeah, absolutely.
There, everything's ready to go. We got an online platform contest that we're running. We got huge sponsors behind it. So, pretty exciting times in skateboarding, and I'm part of the Olympics for skateboarding. Probably like you too, skateboarding is a major player. I've got other stuff going on, but every single day I'm dealing with skating. And what's super cool about right now is my son who's working hand in hand with me on all these big projects that we're doing. So pretty fun, exciting time of my life.
Oh, that's awesome. That is so awesome. So do you have any words of wisdom for the dads out there?
Skateboard dads?
Any dad.
I would say, and it's probably like you, right? Like I bet I'll ask you this question too. Does time go by fast or what?
Oh, it does. It does.
Spend every waking moment that you can with your kids.
Yeah.
Right. And be there to support them on anything they decide to do.
Absolutely.
Right. And it'll all come out for you when those kids are adults. Right. And I've seen the opposite of that. I've seen the parents that were really strict in raising their kids, a certain way, and they don't have that relationship with their kids now in their 20s and 30s. Right. And I always want that huge relationship with my kids. I'll tell you, this is one of the best stories I have about parenting is when Stacey Peralta did the Bones Brigade documentary, which I'm sure you've seen, right?
Oh, absolutely.
He did that to make sure that the person who knows nothing about skateboarding gets it. So it wasn't made for the skateboard industry. It was made for the person who thought something of skateboarding and they can look at it different. So I think my best story I had on that was my bank manager. I call him up. There's a premiere of the Bones Brigade in Vancouver. And I said, hey, we got some tickets. What are you doing Friday night? You want to bring you and your wife, to watch this documentary that my friend did. So he was kind of like, sounds good, but he's not a skater. Like he doesn't know it, but they're Chinese. Very, very, very strict on how they bring up their kids.
Yes.
Right. So piano lessons 4 hours a day, all that kind of stuff, and do this and do that and do that. Very strict how they did it. So anyway, the wife of my bank manager is sitting beside me. and the light, and you've seen it. I mean, I get emotional every time I watch that film. So as the lights come back on in the theater, she's sitting right beside me. I've never met her in my life other than, hey, how you doing, right? So grabs her purse and she brings out the Kleenex and she's wiping her eyes. And she turns to me and she puts her hand on my hand. She goes, when my husband asked me to go to a skateboard premiere on a Friday night, I was like, are you kidding me? But I decided to go because, Kevin, it's you and you're a good client of them and stuff. She goes, you just changed my life on how I'm going to parent my kids. She goes, I got a 13-year-old and a 15-year-old that I've been this way. And that film just changed. And she goes, I thank you from the bottom of my heart. So I went back to Stacy that same night and told her the comments. And Stacy came right back to me and says, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to showcase skateboarding to show what a different way you can look at life on how to raise your kids.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. So
right.
Off of that, do you think skateboarding made you the dad that you are?
1000%.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Like just everything about what skateboarding has taught me. And, you know, I was that kid in school that there was when skateboarding was popular, I was kind of a little bit cool. But when skateboarding was either unpopular or BMX came in or whatever, I was the nerd, throw that kid into the locker, you know, body checking in the hallways and stuff, right? And, you know, same thing, like here I am being a freestyle skateboarder going into a tennis court, lacrosse box with Sean Mortimer, who, you know, wrote the Tony Hawk biography and stuff, and getting kicked out. And I'm thinking, hang on, I'm a professional skateboarder traveling the world, practicing in a tennis court that there's no other tennis court, and security dudes coming and being an asshole to me and kicking me out. And I'm not that guy to confront the security. I just listen and go, yeah, you know, I'm out of here. But thinking to myself is all the brick walls that come up, and you've been through it too, what you see in skateboarding has taught me to get around anything else. And I say that, I bet I say it once a day, don't put that brick wall in front of me. You know, I'll get around that brick wall. And that's what skateboarding teaches you. And I think it just keeps you young. So when you've got that 5-6-year-old and the teenager, you're not this old guy that wants to go play bingo and go lawn bowling. You're understanding what that 15, 16, 17-year-old going through because you're involved in skateboarding, you're involved with the younger culture. And again, some of the top pro skateboarders in the world call it the fountain of youth. And I really do think that's a huge, it keeps you young. Right, you know it. Right? Like if you didn't have skateboarding, who are you hanging out with? You're hanging out with maybe people that are thinking different because they're at that stage of their life that, oh my God, I just turned 40 and now I can't do that anymore. Where guys like us, you're like, I don't care if I'm 40, 50, 60, 70, I still want to be part of skateboarding.
Exactly. Right? As long as I'm rolling around in the park, doesn't matter if I'm just doing a kick turn in a quarter pipe, I'm still skating, I'm still riding, I'm still part of the culture.
And yeah, that's all it takes, right? It's
absolutely
right, and it's massive.
It is.
Right?
It is.
Yeah, I agree.
Wow. Yeah, like I said, I taught my daughters to skateboard. They snowboard. You know, they don't skateboard anymore, but they still continue with snowboarding. But they still look at the culture and understand the culture. And you know, as a dad, to see them develop because of skateboarding too. Like skateboarding was huge for me. You know, they know what it is. Like every Christmas or birthday, they find something skateboarding related and they get it for me. You know,
yeah.
It's just they know.
Snowboard story for me, because my son's a really good snowboarder, is I remember being the father that was like, you know, helping him on the chairlift at a young age and bailing them out when they got stuck in the powder and all those things, right? And you've gone through that too, right? Where all of a sudden, hey, I don't have to bail them out of this powder anymore. Oh, great, they can get on a chairlift by themselves. So all moments in time, you're like, I don't have to deal with that anymore, right? And I never forget when I don't know, Kolby must have been about 12 or 13. And now, oh my God, he's a better snowboarder than me. That sucked. I was like, oh, okay, it's over.
Yeah, my daughter learned switch before I did, so I was like, this sucks.
Yeah, and then you know, my son, I'd be going down, and there's no way I'm going to hit that jump, and he's beside me at 12 years old, taking it without even checking it out first. I'm like, okay, so, yeah.
That's pretty cool. So, as a dad with kids who are no longer at home, how's that affect your relationship with them?
still like really strong. Like I'll see my son later today, but I miss them. I wish I wish I could spend more, time with them. But it's funny, my wife and I, when we know they're coming over for dinner or we're getting together, it's like the super exciting part of the day. You wake up in the morning, oh great, I'm gonna see my kid later on today, right? So the relationship's super, super strong. And like I say, I guess, I'm kind of living the dream as far as like my kids. I had a vision very early as I had kids, and not that I ever pushed them into it. So it wasn't like, hey, you need to go to Harvard to become a doctor. I wasn't that guy, but they just developed on their own, and I supported what they were doing. But I remember having that vision at a young age. I said it would be so cool, since my son's so into skateboarding and snowboarding, that he helps support me in the business aspect. Plus, he does all this, the skateboarding and snowboarding also. So that happened. And my other guy that was kind of the MacGyver guy was just like, man, would it be cool, this major project that we have up here, that he's my guy. He can fix anything from hydraulics to you name it. And that's where I am in life right now. I've got my son that's all over, supporting all the big skateboard projects that we got. And I got my son that's probably, salting and clearing snow right now as we speak, right? Like this, it's the best.
That's awesome. That's great to hear. It's nice to know that dads are still continuing on with their relationships with their kids after they've grown. Like it was hard for me to become an empty nester at first, but I kind of enjoy it because it gives me more appreciation for my daughters.
It hits hard, like probably with you for a couple months, and then it's just like, okay, and you appreciate, and then you feel a little bit responsible for where they how they handle life, right? And
exactly.
And I just try to show them the best way that I could do, and it kind of fed off to them, right? With no pressure. And I think the opposite effect of that is a guy, like Rodney Mullen, where look at what he did to our industry, changed our sport completely, biggest, game changer in skateboarding history. But he had unsupportive parents, very unsupportive parents, huge. Anti. If anybody gets a chance to read Sean Mortimer's biography on Rodney Mullen called The Mutt, I highly recommend it. That is the complete opposite that what you and I have talked about.
Yeah, wow, like, oh geez, that's sad to hear, not having non-supportive parents, especially.
And let's look at that from a father's point of view, right? I'm not saying that I get it, but here's what went down. The kid is one of the most intelligent people in the world, right? He's and he's even in the top of Mensa, so he's genius IQ, right? So now that kid is, teenage years, and he could be a rocket science. So you got the parent going, skateboarding, 1979, drug addicts, my kid's a friggin' genius, get off the damn skateboard. Yeah. And that was the pressure that he had. And he was the cheapest little shy kid, right? He would have been, if you had Rodney Mullen as a son, when he was growing up, he would be the kid that you wanted, right? He wasn't a troublemaker. He was that kid, but the parents wanted nothing to do with skateboarding, right? And the stories just go on and on and on. But that documentary, the movie should be made of Rodney Mullen's life, because unlike any other pro athlete at that level, there's nobody on this planet that has gone through what he had to go through to skateboard.
Oh, wow. That's just a shame, especially considering he's like probably the world's best skateboarder out there with his innovation and everything that he's brought to skateboarding. Like it's just sad that he didn't have the backing from his mom and dad. And
you nailed it, right? Sure, there's the Tony Hawks of the world that have brought skateboarding to a whole new level, but as far as the guy that's the most innovative, creative, the most talented skateboarder, there's nobody he's the Wayne Gretzky, right? There's nobody that comes close. I mean, competing against him, I said it time after time. If I got second to him, was like getting first. Yeah. Right? He was untouchable. And what he has brought to skateboarding, I just hope one day somebody does the full movie about that guy. And awesome. Anybody gets a chance to read that book, I highly recommend it, to show you what society can do it to a kid like that and what should have happened.
Oh, wow. Yes, I definitely need to read that book. Oh, wow. Are there any dads that you look up to, like say fellow skateboarders? Like, do you know any dads that you like, wow, I wish I was more like that?
I think in my life, I've taken the best. If I meet somebody for the first time, or it's a close friend or relationship or whatever, I try to take the best out of everybody. So yeah, there's lots of people around me, like you know, Stacy, and it was sad to see his son pass away. But there's been, I think when I look at all the dads I know out there, and not to say that I don't know really good dads that had nothing to do with skateboarding, but the best ones have been the skateboard dads. That it puts them on a different level. They seem to be closer with their kids than the good dads. So there's good dads, don't get me wrong. Like lots of people around me, again, nothing to do with skateboarding, who are great dads. But over and above that, there's the dad that skateboards and their kids are into it somehow. So they might go scootering at the skateboard park because they're 7, 8, 9, but the dad's skateboarding. But there's still that interaction where dad's taking them to something, that cool spot like that. So they might BMX, they might scooter or whatever. But something about skateboard dads is never really being able to nail it. But it seems to be that they're, and again, now all this history that I've had in skateboarding is those kids have been, the skateboard dad that's raised those kids have been successful. And the relationship between the dad and the kids is still really strong when those kids are in their teens, 20s, and 30s.
Oh, awesome. It as a dad, you kind of look back at a lot of things, like, you know, like skateboarding really bonded my daughters together with me at a younger age because they got to share. You know, it was about sharing time. You know, like unfortunately they don't skateboard anymore, but I miss those times, a lot of that. You know, like,
but like you said, they're still, you know, they still know what's going on and they still follow it, right? And that's a big part of it, right? Like, sure, you may not skate, but you know, as long as you're still involved in the culture, right? And the people around.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm sure when you go hang out someplace, there's a lot of skateboarders around you with your daughters, right?
Oh yeah. All my friends are skaters or ex-skaters now, whatever. And my daughters know them, like Christian, our founder, you know, like that's their uncle Christian. We've been friends for 25 years plus. And you know, they know him as a skateboarder, you know. Like it's just something they know. Like they know skateboarding is a big part of our lives, and they're very supportive. Like if we go out skateboarding, my youngest is always, don't break a hip, old man. You know, like she's on me about it. But you know, like she's so supportive of when I still go out. You know, I'm like, we tried to do it like a Sunday morning skateboard run with a bunch of old guys. And you know, she's like, the night before, you're gonna break a hip, old man, you're not young anymore, don't do this, don't do that, you know, just kind of motherly at me. But it feels good that she still supports me in that.
Well, even like a kid like Andy Anderson is, you know, I put him, the reason that he's been such a game changer too, he's had huge support from his family, right? So they're that family when Andy got into it at 4 years old that took him to California to the skateboard parks and took him to the contest and, you know, helped them and through his whole career. And, you know, I look back at that too. And that was a big part why we've got Andy Anderson so successful at the table, because he had the support around him from, you know, especially his mom and dad and family and friends, right?
Nice. Do you feel like a adoptive dad to Andy?
Yeah, I mean, I've always really looked up to a guy like Stacy Peralta, right? Where he went in and picked the guys that started the Bones Brigade when really the industry didn't want to touch those people, right? Like you look at the old footage of Rodney Mullen in 1982, the industry wanted nothing to do with that guy, right? They wanted cool Tony Alva, Jay Adams type of guys. And here's Rodney, where Stacy's seen something in him and seen something in Tony. Tony was that lanky guy that was pulling up all these tricks. It wasn't the gnarly dude either, right? So I've always looked at that going, I think I have that in me too, I can look at 20 or 200 skateboarders and pick that guy that I think can go next level. And so I've been successful in that through my life. But when I seen Andy, that was the one guy that I really just started, you know, focusing on and go, this guy's got it, right? And the way I liked about it, and you know, you're back in history enough, when have we ever seen that you got one of the best in the world at street, tranny, and freestyle? It's never existed. never existed in
No.
that. So yeah, I just really want to see the best things for Andy and help nurture him along. I think my best story about that is he graduates high school, so he's whatever 18, and his parents take me out for dinner, and his parents are like, okay, he graduated, he's really not making money from skateboarding, should he go get a real job? I was like, no. I said, give me just another 2 years with this guy. And it's not about the money, but I don't want him to go work 40 hours someplace and take that energy away from and losing that. Because you can lose somebody at that point. He's really good, but you put him into a normal job. And then, so I said, just give me 2 years. And thank God they listened to me, because I just knew that it was there. And there were so many cool things about Andy where even my peers around me going, Kevin, don't waste your time with this guy. He's this quirky freestyler, wears the helmet. There's no way this guy's going to be to the level that you think he's going to be. The industry's not going to accept him. And it's like, I was there through Rodney. I was there through Tony. Like, believe me, just trust me, this is going to work. And then when this board shape came out, people were like, no, like, don't put it out like that. Like, tell George, do a normal popsicle shape. It's not going to sell. So George and I had that conversation and said, let's just try this, right? Like it's completely different. If it doesn't work, we can go back to the regular shape. Well, that's board now, whatever, 3.5 years later, it's the best selling skateboard on the planet.
It's so hard to find. Like, guys want mint for it. Mint.
Right? It's insane. Like, a shop can bring that in and buy it and double their money, like, in a heartbeat, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's so highly demanded. And, I love telling this story too. Like, you take 200 of the best street skaters in the world and put them into an arena right now and ask any of those guys to spin more than 5 360s. Andy will go out there and do 40 360s. Try to get anybody to do 2. Impossible.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's the way I like to show it, is Andy adapts that to everything else he's got going in the street and tranny, and you can see it, right? And I've done enough shows and demos with that guy. It's just like, he's so friggin' innovative. Like, all of a sudden, like, I'll go to him, when did you learn that? I don't know, I just did it for the first time. It's like, what?
That's
he'll pull it off away. He'll make it first try.
That's incredible. Well, that's all the questions I have for you, Kevin. It's been a real privilege, real honor to finally speak with you.
No, I totally appreciate the interview, and it's just we got a lot in common, and and congratulations on how you raised your kids too, because I think people like you and I look back and going, whatever we did something right to know. I'm super proud of my kids, and I'm sure you are too. And again, and I'll leave it with that: is the skateboarding play into that? Absolutely. Can I put my finger on it? How? No, but I've seen it over and over and over again.
Yeah, it just magically helps you bond. I think skateboarding makes you a better person, really. Like,
you nailed it. And again, society would. So, are you crazy? Like the normal general population, after what you just said on that comment, would call bullshit on that.
Yeah.
And until you do it, like you said earlier, until you're actually there and you've been there, done that, you're a true skateboarder. You can't even put it into words to somebody on what that does to your life. You can't. It's so hard to put that down on paper, on writing, right? Because it is something that magically happens.
It does. It's true.
Yeah.
It's like, take your kid to the skate park and watch them drop in for the first time, or they kick, turn, or ollie. It's a reward in itself. Like, and then to see them grow as an adult into an adulthood, it's amazing. It's just, being a dad is a privilege. I think a lot of people take away from dads and don't think that we want to be more part of our kids' lives. I think that stigmatism of old school dads is still out there. And this is why Rad Dads is what it is Christian wants to change that stigma, and he's really gone through the stages of putting us together, working with us. We do the podcasts and stuff like that, like the Zoom meetings. We have a lot of like punk rock dads. Like, we have a lot of interviews with dads who are from punk bands, you know, like
Cool.
it's just, it's a great community, and to bring fatherhood to ahead so people could see, you know, it's just awesome. I'm
No,
so proud to be part of it.
Yeah, no, everything about this interview is fantastic. I appreciate that. I'm honored to be a part of it.
Yeah, it's great, you know, like it's awesome. So thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it. I know you're a busy man. I know you're off to do some more things with your son
Oh, no
today.
problem. Stay in touch. Sure. I can, you know, if you want anybody lined up, just let me know. And yeah, stay in touch. It was great talking to you.
Absolutely, I will. You
Okay.
sent me your number, and I'm
Yeah.
so stoked on that. Like,
No, perfect.
Kevin, you're a huge influence in skateboarding for Canada. You know, like you're the first pro. You know, you've brought a lot to skateboarding in Canada. You've done lots, you know, and
you.
with mentoring Andy Anderson, you know, like being a father figure to him and helping him come along, you know, like people really look up to you as a leader. And I think doing this interview really kind of shows everybody you're still out there. You're still being a dad. You're still being a pro skater. You're doing it all for us.
Thanks so much.
No problem. Thank you very much for your time.
Hey, take care. Stay in touch.
Have a beautiful day.
Okay.